find who took her. I don't care. If you have to burn this city to the bedrock," Vincent roared, the glass on his desk shattering under his fist. He was the city's most ruthless ghost. But when they finally dragged her broken body into the light, the devil wept. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit offices of Harbor Freight and Logistics in South Boston, Penelope Abbott was invisible. Or at least she prayed she was. At 28, Penny was a plus-size woman in a world that demanded sharp edges. She wore a size 20, her soft curves hidden beneath oversized, thick-knit cardigans, her round face framed by heavy-rimmed glasses that she constantly pushed up the bridge of her nose. To the burly dock workers and the terrifyingly quiet men in tailored Italian suits who came and went from the executive floor, she was just the bookkeeper. A soft, quiet girl who never asked questions, never looked anyone in the eye, and never ever made a mistake on a spreadsheet. Harbor Freight was a front. Everyone who worked there knew it, even if no one said it out loud. It was the laundering hub for the Romano crime syndicate, a multi-million-dollar empire built on extortion, import smuggling, and blood. At the top of that empire sat Vincent Romano. Vincent was a man carved from marble and violence. At 34, he had inherited the family business after a bloody coup that left his uncle buried in a landfill in New Jersey. Vincent rarely spoke. He communicated in subtle nods, cold stares, and the terrifying efficiency of his right-hand man, Leo Campbell. Penny was terrified of Vincent. Whenever he walked onto the accounting floor, the temperature seemed to drop. She would shrink into her chair, hoping her physical mass, something she had spent her whole life feeling ashamed of, would somehow magically condense and disappear. She assumed a man like Vincent, a man who dated runway models and Russian heiresses, looked right through her. She was fat, she was plain, and she was irrelevant. She couldn't have been more wrong. Vincent noticed everything. He noticed the way Penny's thick, honey-blonde hair fell over her shoulder when she was deep in thought. He noticed the soft, rhythmic clicking of her manicured nails against her keyboard. In a life filled with deceit, silicon and plastic, Penny's soft, unbothered authenticity anchored him. He found himself finding excuses to walk past her cubicle, breathing in the faint scent of her vanilla lotion. She was the one untouched, innocent thing in his decaying world. But he kept his distance. A man like him only destroyed soft things. Until the third Tuesday in October. It was 7:45 p.m. The office was empty, save for the hum of the servers. Penny was working late, running a reconciliation protocol on a series of offshore accounts tied to a shell company called Apex Holdings. She was brilliant with numbers. It was why she was paid an exorbitant salary to keep her mouth shut. But as she cross-referenced the Cayman Island routing numbers against the physical cargo manifests from Pier 47, her heart stopped. There was a discrepancy, not a rounding error, a glaring, bleeding hole. $2.4 million had been skimmed over the last 6 months. The money wasn't going to the Romano family's central trust. It was being systematically siphoned into a private account under the name of Arthur Pendleton, a known alias for Tommy Sullivan, one of Vincent's most trusted capos. Penny's hands began to shake. Her plush thighs trembled against the fabric of her chair as she scrambled to close the encrypted tabs. She had found a rat. In the Mafia, finding a rat was often just as fatal as being one. She reached for her purse, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Just leave, she told herself. Go home to your cat, lock the door, and pretend you saw nothing. Working late, Penny. The voice was like gravel scraping against a tin roof. Penny froze, her blood turning to ice. She slowly turned her chair. Standing in the doorway of the dimly lit accounting department was Tommy Sullivan. He was a large, imposing man with a jagged scar across his chin and eyes devoid of any human empathy. Behind him stood two massive enforcers, their hands resting casually inside their leather jackets. "Mr. Sullivan." Penny stammered her voice, barely a whisper. She instinctively pulled her oversized cardigan tighter around her full figure, trying to make herself a smaller target. I was just finishing up." Tommy walked slowly toward her desk. His eyes flicked to her glowing computer monitor. Penny had closed the main tab, but the reflection of the Apex Holdings directory was still visible on the glass partition behind her. Tommy smiled. It was a terrifying, hollow thing. "You're a smart girl, Penny. A bit heavy on the eyes, but you got a brain in that big head of yours." He leaned over her desk, the smell of stale scotch and cheap cologne invading her senses. "But sometimes, smart girls look where they ain't supposed to." "I don't know what you mean." Penny lied, a tear betraying her as it slipped down her plump cheek. Tommy sighed, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket. "It's a shame. I actually liked you, kid." He snapped his fingers. Before Penny could scream, a heavy, calloused hand clamped over her mouth. A thick arm wrapped around her waist, hauling her out of her chair. She kicked her sensible loafers, scraping against the carpet, but her soft body was no match for the hardened muscle of the enforcers. A cloth soaked in chloroform was pressed hard against her face. She fought at her heart, hammering against her ribs, but within seconds, the fluorescent lights blurred into darkness. Vincent Romano rarely slept, but when his encrypted cell phone buzzed at 6 a.m. the following morning, a primal sense of dread clawed at his chest. He answered it on the first ring, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse overlooking the Boston skyline. "Speak," Vincent commanded. "Boss, it was Leo Campbell." His usually steady voice had a slight tremor. "We have a problem at the office. Penny Abbott didn't clock in." Vincent's jaw tightened. "She's never missed a day in 4 years. Check her apartment." "I'm already here, boss." Leo replied, the sound of police sirens wailing faintly in the background. "Her door was kicked in. Her cat is crying in the kitchen, but the place is tossed. She's gone." The silence on the line was deafening. The coffee mug in Vincent's hand shattered hot liquid, scalding his knuckles, but he didn't feel it. A terrifying, cold fury erupted in his veins. The monster he kept tightly leashed within him snapped its chains. "Lock down the city!" Vincent's voice was a dead, hollow rasp that promised a bloodbath. "No shipments leave the docks. No trucks cross the state lines. Ground the private jets." "Vincent, she's just a bookkeeper." Leo started trying to inject logic into a logistical nightmare. "Bring her to me." Vincent roared, the sheer volume of his voice vibrating the glass of his penthouse. "I don't care if you have to burn this city to the bedrock. Find who took her. If a single hair on her head is out of place, I will peel the skin from the man who did it while he breathes." For the next 14 hours, Boston became a war zone. The Romano Syndicate descended upon the criminal underworld like a plague of locusts. Bars were smashed, rival gang hideouts were raided, and men were dragged into the back of butcher shops to answer questions with broken jaws. Vincent led the hunt himself. He discarded his tailored suit for a tactical vest, his icy blue eyes manic. He couldn't lose her. The thought of Penny, sweet, soft, gentle Penny, who blushed when the delivery boy smiled at her in the hands of monsters, made him violently ill. He had spent years watching her from afar, hoarding her smiles, protective of her insecurities. By 9 p.m. a low-level thug, begging for his life, gave up a location, an abandoned meatpacking warehouse down in the Seaport district. Vincent's black SUV smashed through the chain-link gates of the warehouse at 60 miles an hour. Before the vehicle even came to a complete stop, Vincent was out a suppressed Glock 19 in his grip. Leo and a dozen heavily armed men flanked him. They breached the heavy steel doors. Gunfire immediately erupted. The staccato pop of suppressed weapons echoed in the cavernous, rotting building. Vincent moved like a phantom, putting 2 rounds into the chest of an enforcer who stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. He didn't blink. He didn't hesitate. He was a machine fueled by a singular, desperate obsession. When the smoke cleared, 6 of Sullivan's men lay dead on the floor. At the far end of the warehouse, under a single swinging industrial bulb, sat a wooden chair. Vincent lowered his weapon, his breath hitching in his throat. "Penny!" He ran. The ruthless Mafia, Don the man who had watched men burn without batting an eye, sprinted across the blood-slicked concrete and dropped to his knees. The sight of her broke him. Penny was tied to the chair with thick industrial zip ties. Her beautiful soft curves were covered in dirt and grime. Her oversized cardigan was torn, revealing the pale, bruised skin of her shoulder. But it was her face that made Vincent let out a guttural, wounded sound. Her lip was split and swollen, a trail of dried blood running down her chin. Her left eye was bruised, a terrifying shade of purple and swollen shut. She looked fragile, shattered. "Penny! Sweetheart, look at me!" Vincent choked out his hands, trembling violently, as he reached into his boot for a tactical knife. He sliced through the heavy zip ties, tossing the plastic aside. Penny slumped forward, her heavy, soft body falling directly into Vincent's chest. She let out a weak, agonizing whimper, flinching away from him. "No, please." "I didn't say anything. It's me. It's Vincent," he whispered, wrapping his strong arms around her thick waist, pulling her into his lap right there on the filthy floor. He buried his face in her matted blonde hair, his broad shoulders shaking. The Iron King of Boston was crying. "You're safe. I've got you. I swear to God, I've got you." Penny forced her good eye open, looking up at the terrifying mob boss, who was currently holding her like she was the most precious thing in the universe. "Vincent," she whispered, her voice cracking. Tommy Sullivan. He's stealing from you. 2 million. Shh." Vincent stroked her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear that cut through the dirt on her face. I know. Suddenly the sound of a slow, mocking clap echoed from the catwalk above them. Vincent's head snapped up, his eyes turning instantly murderous. Standing on the rusted iron walkway above was Tommy Sullivan. But Tommy wasn't looking at Vincent with fear. He was smiling. In his hand, he held a thick manila folder. "Touching." Tommy sneered, his voice echoing in the vast space. "The boss and the fat little bookkeeper. Really, Vinny, I didn't know you liked 'em with this much extra baggage." Vincent's hand tightened around his Glock. "You're a dead man, Tommy. There isn't a hole deep enough for you to hide in." "I don't need to hide, boss." Tommy laughed, tossing the manila folder over the edge of the catwalk. It hit the concrete floor papers, spilling out. Bank statements, wire transfers. "You see, when the commission asks why I had to put down your favorite little number cruncher, those documents are going to show that she was the one skimming the accounts." All the IP addresses led right back to her cozy little desk. Tommy pulled a heavy assault rifle from behind his back, aiming it directly down at where Vincent sat on the floor, cradling Penny. It's a shame she resisted arrest. Tommy smiled, his finger curling around the trigger. The deafening roar of the assault rifle shattered the tense silence of the warehouse. In a fraction of a second, Vincent moved. He didn't dive for cover or raise his weapon to return fire. Instead, he threw his large frame completely over Penny, using his own body as a human shield. He wrapped his arms around her soft, thick waist, burying her face into his chest as the concrete around them exploded into deadly shrapnel. A heavy, sickening thud resonated as a high-caliber round tore through the Kevlar vest on Vincent's left shoulder. He let out a sharp grunt, his grip on Penny tightening so fiercely she could feel the violent pounding of his heart against her cheek. Before Tommy could fire a second burst, the darkness of the warehouse erupted in a synchronized storm of return fire. Leo Campbell had flanked the catwalk. His suppressed Sig Sauer spat 3 rapid shots. Tommy screamed as a bullet shattered his collarbone, the assault rifle slipping from his grasp and clattering to the concrete floor far below. Bleeding and cursing, Tommy scrambled backward into the shadows of the upper loading doors, disappearing into the Boston night. "Boss, are you hit?" Leo yelled, sprinting across the floor, his men already fanning out to secure the perimeter and chase the bleeding traitor. Vincent ignored the burning agony radiating from his shoulder. He pulled back just enough to inspect the woman in his arms. Penny was shaking violently, her breath coming in ragged, terrified gasps. Her plump hands were curled into tight fists against his tactical vest, smearing his blood across her torn cardigan. "I'm fine," Vincent growled, his voice tight. He slipped his good arm under her knees and his injured arm around her broad back. With a surge of adrenaline, he stood up, lifting her off the filthy floor. Penny gasped, instinctively grabbing his neck. "Vincent, know your shot. Put me down, I'm too heavy." "Stop!" Vincent commanded, his voice dark and absolute. He looked down at her swollen, bruised face, his icy blue eyes burning with an intensity that made the breath catch in her throat. "You are not too heavy. You are exactly what I need to hold right now. Do you understand me?" Penny's throat bobbed as she swallowed a sob. In 28 years, no man had ever looked at her substantial curves with anything other than polite indifference or cruel mockery. Yet here was the most dangerous man in New England, bleeding from a gunshot wound, carrying her weight with an effortless, possessive ease, as if she were a precious crown he had just reclaimed from the mud. Within 20 minutes, Vincent's armored SUV pulled into the private underground garage of the St. Regis Residences in the Seaport district. Vincent bypassed the emergency room entirely. Hospitals asked too many questions, and Tommy still had men on the streets. Instead, an underground concierge physician, Dr. Harrison, was already waiting in Vincent's sprawling penthouse. The next few hours were a blur of medical alcohol stitches and hushed, frantic orders. "Doctor." Harrison treated Vincent's shoulder. First, the bullet had fortunately deflected off the trauma plate, leaving a deep graze, but no shattered bone. But Vincent refused any painkillers. He sat in a leather armchair, a glass of neat bourbon in his hand, his eyes never leaving Penny as the doctor tended to her on the oversized velvet sofa. She had 2 cracked ribs, a severe concussion, and deep tissue bruising. When the doctor gently cut away her ruined cardigan to clean the cuts on her pale, fleshy shoulders, Penny instinctively tried to cover her stomach with her arms, a flush of deep shame heating her cheeks. She was painfully aware of her fat body, of the rolls of her stomach, and the thickness of her thighs exposed under the harsh penthouse lighting. Vincent saw the gesture. He set his glass down, walked over and dismissed the doctor with a sharp jerk of his chin. Once they were alone, the silence of the luxurious apartment felt heavy. Vincent knelt beside the sofa. He reached out with his uninjured arm, gently taking her hands and pulling them away from her stomach. "Don't hide from me," he murmured, his thumb stroking the soft, bruised skin of her wrist. "I'm a mess," Penny whispered, a fresh tear sliding down her cheek. "I'm fat, I'm bruised. I'm just the bookkeeper, Vincent. Why are you doing this? Tommy was going to kill you because of me. Tommy is going to die because he touched what is mine." Vincent corrected his voice, a low, terrifying rumble. He leaned in his forehead, resting gently against hers. "You think I haven't noticed you, Penelope? I've spent 4 years watching you. I watched how brilliant you are. I watched your soft smiles when you thought no one was looking. In a world full of fake smiles and plastic venom, your softness is the only real thing I have left. I don't care about the numbers. I don't care about the money. I care about you. Penny's breath hitched. She looked into the eyes of the ruthless Mafia Don and saw nothing but desperate, terrifying devotion. Suddenly, a heavy knock echoed from the mahogany double doors. Leo stepped in, his face grim. In his hands, he held the manila folder Tommy had dropped at the warehouse. "Boss, you need to see this," Leo said, setting the bloody folder on the glass coffee table. "Tommy's frame job is airtight. He fabricated wire transfers, email logs, and digital signatures. To the rest of the commission, it looks exactly like Penny stole the $2 million, and he was just trying to recover it. If we kill him without proof of his treason, the New York families will declare war on us for breaking protocol." Vincent's jaw locked. He stared at the papers, the violent monster inside him, warring with the cold tactician. Penny slowly pushed herself up against the plush pillows, wincing as her cracked ribs protested. She reached for the folder. "Penny, lay down," Vincent started. "No. Give it to me," she demanded, her voice suddenly losing its tremor. She might be battered, she might be terrified, but when it came to numbers, Penelope Abbott was an apex predator. She adjusted her heavy-rimmed glasses and squinted at the bank statements. She traced the fabricated routing numbers, her mind visualizing the global financial network. Then a small, triumphant smile broke through her swollen lips. "He's stupid," Penny whispered. Vincent and Leo exchanged a look. "What do you mean?" Vincent asked. "He used a real private equity firm to backdate the fake transfers." Penny explained, her finger-tapping on a printed spreadsheet. "Wellington and Cross on State Street. But he didn't account for the swift code latency between their servers and the Cayman holding accounts. These timestamp logs say the money was moved on a Sunday at 3 a.m. Eastern Time. The Cayman Central Bank server undergoes maintenance every Sunday from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. No wires can be authorized during that window." Leo's eyes widened. "It's a digital impossibility." "Exactly," Penny said, her confidence surging, making her soft face glow despite the bruises. "But more importantly, if you give me a secure laptop, I don't just have to prove he faked this. I can find where he actually hid your real money. Tommy isn't smart enough to wash $2 million without leaving a breadcrumb trail." Vincent stared at her, a profound mixture of awe and dark pride settling in his chest. He turned to his second-in-command. "Leo." Vincent smirked. "Get my girl a laptop." For 3 hours, the only sound in the penthouse was the frantic, rhythmic clacking of the keyboard resting on Penny's plush thighs. She was a maestro, conducting a symphony of code proxy servers and backdoor access points. Vincent sat in the armchair opposite her, sipping his bourbon and watching her work. He was mesmerized. The way she chewed on her bottom lip when she was concentrating, the way her thick, beautiful fingers danced across the keys. She was the most magnificent creature he had ever seen. "Got him?" Penny suddenly breathed out, hitting the enter key with a definitive clack. Vincent was by her side in an instant. "Show me." Penny pointed to the screen. "Tommy didn't keep the money offshore. He washed it through a series of shell companies in Belize, but the final destination is domestic. It's a corporate trust account at Sovereign Security Bank in Providence, Rhode Island. And look at the trust's secondary signatory." She clicked a PDF file, bringing up a scanned document. The name at the bottom made Vincent's blood run cold. Declan O'Connor. The Irish Syndicate. Leo cursed from the doorway. "Tommy isn't just stealing, boss. He's funding an alliance. He was going to use our own money to finance a coup with the O'Connors. And where is Tommy right now?" Vincent asked, his voice deadly calm. Penny typed a rapid series of commands, hacking into the private aviation logs of a small airstrip just outside of Providence. He booked a charter flight under his mother's maiden name. Tail number N442-Victor. It's scheduled for wheels up in 45 minutes. He's running to Dublin. Vincent leaned down and pressed a fierce, lingering kiss to Penny's unbruised cheek. You are a genius, Penelope. Rest. I'll be back before dawn. Vincent. She caught his wrist before he could pull away. Her soft, terrified eyes met his hard ones. Please, come back to me. I will always come back to you, he vowed. The runway at the Providence airstrip was slick with freezing rain. Tommy Sullivan paced nervously by the steps of the Gulf Stream, G200 checking his bloody watch. His shoulder was tightly bandaged, the painkillers making him sweat despite the cold. Hurry it up. Tommy barked at the ground crew loading his duffel bags of cash. I wouldn't rush, Tommy. You aren't going anywhere. Tommy spun around. Out of the heavy fog, the black silhouettes of 5 SUVs materialized. The headlights cut on, simultaneously blinding him. Dozens of heavily armed men poured out of the vehicles, creating an impenetrable wall of steel and violence around the jet. From the center of the phalanx walked Vincent Romano. He wore a long black wool overcoat, his injured arm resting in his pocket, a silenced pistol gripped tightly in his good hand. He looked like the devil coming to collect a debt. Tommy panicked, reaching for the weapon at his waistband. He didn't even clear the holster. Vincent raised his pistol and fired a single round. The bullet shattered Tommy's right kneecap. Tommy screamed, collapsing onto the wet tarmac. He clutched his ruined leg, sobbing, as Vincent slowly walked up to him. You broke protocol, Tommy, Vincent said, his voice echoing over the roar of the idling jet engine. You stole from the family. You conspired with the O'Connors. Vinny, please, we grew up together. It was business. Tommy begged, spitting blood onto the asphalt. Business I could have forgiven. Business I could have handled. Vincent crouched down, grabbing Tommy by his wet collar and yanking him close. But you put your hands on my woman. You left bruises on her skin. For that there is no forgiveness. She's a fat nobody. Tommy shrieked a final, desperate act of defiance. Vincent's eyes went completely dead. She is the Queen of Boston, and you are a ghost. Vincent pressed the barrel of the pistol against Tommy's forehead and pulled the trigger. The echoing crack signaled the end of a rebellion before it ever truly began. Vincent stood up, wiping a speck of blood from his cheek. He looked at Leo. Send the body to Declan O'Connor. Tell him the Romano family sends their regards, and bring the money back to the city. Yes, boss. Where are you going? Vincent turned back toward his SUV. I'm going home. 3 days later, the sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse. The bruises on Penny's face had faded to a dull yellow, and she was finally able to breathe without a sharp pain in her ribs. She stood in front of a massive gilded mirror in Vincent's dressing room. She was no longer wearing the oversized drab cardigans that she used to hide her body. Instead, she wore a custom-tailored emerald green silk dress that Vincent had ordered for her from a private boutique on Newbury Street. The dress hugged every single curve. It cinched at her thick, beautiful waist and cascaded smoothly over her wide hips and plush thighs. The color brought out the gold in her blonde hair and the soft pink of her cheeks. For the first time in her entire life, Penny Abbott didn't look at her heavy reflection and feel shame. She looked at herself and saw power. She saw beauty. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind. Vincent pressed a kiss to her bare shoulder, his gaze meeting hers in the reflection of the mirror. Breathtaking, he murmured, his hands resting possessively flat against her soft stomach. I don't look like a bookkeeper, anymore," Penny said softly, leaning her weight back into his solid chest. Vincent turned her around his hands, moving up to cup her face. He looked at her with a reverence that made her heart ache in the best possible way. "You were never just a bookkeeper, Penelope. You were always a queen. I was just waiting for you to see it." He leaned down and kissed her deep and consuming, the terrifying mob boss, and the brilliant, beautiful woman he loved against all odds. He had built an empire of blood and shadow, but as he held her full, soft body against his, Vincent Romano knew that she was his greatest treasure, and he would burn the world down 1,000 times over to keep her safe. What an intense journey of power, revenge, and unexpected romance. Vincent proved that true kings don't care about society's standards. They protect what they love at all costs. Did Penny's brilliant hacker move surprise you? If you loved this thrilling mafia romance and want more gripping real-life drama stories, please smash that like button, share this video with your friends who love a good twist, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more explosive tales.